Hello, my name is W.J. Sheehan. I am the author of a series of books entitled Bigfoot Terror in the Woods, Sightings and Encounters. The series is a compilation of sightings, encounters, and evidential findings pertaining to Bigfoot in North America. It's available in both paperback and ebook formats by going to www.buybigfootbooks.com, and the link will take you where you want to go. Both now as well as going into the future, I will be reading various chapters from the series and posting them for your listening pleasure. If you've seen something, say something. I can be contacted at splinters@optonline.net. That's SPLINTERS at OPTonline.net. Today's reading is entitled The Dead Falls Lake Affair, and it's taken from Volume 1 of my series. I hope you enjoy it. Coming into this tale, I am going to warn you that this may be the freakiest sighting that I have ever heard. Follow along as Marion Lane and her brother Chris weave this amazing story. In July of 1984, a group of about 20 people and the two of us had planned to head into the Shasta National Forest and hike up to Dead Falls Lake for a little overnighter with guitars and beers. If you've never been there, Mount Eddy Lake and Dead Falls Lake sit in what I would call a bowl surrounded by mountain peaks. There isn't much of a shoreline to speak of. Instead, the surrounding hills and trees abruptly meet the water's edge. It's a fantastic and desolate spot, and it's a great destination for those who want to hike in and crash on a blanket once you can't stay awake any longer. We began the night's festivities, and it was turning out to be a pretty good party. We had some campfire sing-alongs, some hot dogs, and quite a lot of beer. We first noticed the blue light at about 2 a.m. This light was emanating from thousands of feet up, glowing over one of the northern peaks. Considering that there isn't anything out here in this hour of the night, aside from people like us, it was a bizarre sight. Needless to say, it had all of our attention. Some of us sat and others stood as we watched the blue light grow in intensity. It seemed as though the unknown source of the light was about to come over the peak. About 10 minutes later, there it was. It was miles away, but we could now make out a large glowing disk exuding what appeared to be a combination of extremely bright blue and white light. From a distance, it almost appeared like the disk was alive. I know this is really weird, but you will know why I mention it in a minute. If it hadn't had our attention before, it certainly had our attention now. It slowly made its way over the peak and was gradually making its way down into the valley in which we were gathered. As it began its descent, beams of light started to emanate from different sides of the object. They moved from one side to the other, flashing on and off as it appeared to be scouring the terrain. Some members of the group were already getting antsy and afraid, especially the girls, but there was nowhere to run and hide, especially since the searchlights were so bright. It was getting closer and closer to our position. We realized that whatever it was could certainly see our blazing fire, so some of us started to throw dirt on the flames and squirting them with beer. Others filled empty bottles with water from the lake in order to extinguish it. It was difficult to gauge the distance and size of this object, but it was slowly coming towards the lake, and the entire landscape was glowing beneath it. All of us could now see that the craft was organic. Now it was glowing with a yellowish white color, but bright blue still swirled around its base, which appeared like pigment being mixed into a can of fresh paint. It was beyond my wildest imagination. Another 10 minutes passed when half of the group said that they were getting the heck out of here, and the rest of us stayed. In the movies, the people who run always get attacked, and I wasn't planning on being one of them. This craft had now reached the other end of the lake, which was still a considerable distance away from us. By this time I could now see that the disc was at least 200 feet across, when all of a sudden it stopped and began to pulse, growing brighter and then dimmer like a heartbeat. All of the searchlights had stopped moving, and a ring of fuzzy, multicolored lights started to circle its outer edge. They were red, green, and yellow, and they weren't sharp beams like the searchlights. Our fire was completely out now, and we were standing in the pitch dark, totally awed by what we were seeing. As the thing hovered over this one spot for almost 20 minutes. Suddenly, a wide column of powder blue light flashed from its base to the ground as the craft continued to pulse. From our vantage point, it was little more than a speck, but there was something being drawn up from the ground within the tube of light. The thing stopped about midway between the ground and the craft, literally suspended in midair within the light. Everything stayed still for another 10 or 15 minutes, but then several other specks started to descend from the craft's base. These specks were much smaller than the first. Again, from the distance we were, there was no way of telling what any of these things were. The descending specks stopped in the middle of the tube of light, right where the first thing was. After another half an hour of stillness, the specks that had descended from the craft were drawn back upward and vanished from our sight. However, the other one remained suspended in the middle of the tube of light. Suddenly, the craft stopped pulsing and began to glow brightly again, illuminating the entire lake area and the countryside below. And then it started to move. It glided slowly and silently over the lake, heading directly for us. Not a word was spoken among those who remained. We were awestruck and silent, staring in utter amazement. It was only a football field away and coming closer, and I could now see that this was a glowing structure. It was definitely a large disc, but it had to be 400 feet wide, not 200 feet that I had originally thought. It was enormous. The shaft of blue light remained totally intact and unmoving as the ship itself moved over the lake. The water started to grow choppy, just like it would on a windy day. However, it was only choppy within the confines of where the light contacted the lake's surface. Everything around the perimeter was still calm. The light was drawing on and or disturbing the water as it passed over it. Now I could see beyond the shadow of a doubt that the speck that had been lifted up from the earth into the tube of light was a gigantic Bigfoot. It looked like it was in a state of suspended animation, being held in the light some 75 feet off the lake's surface. It didn't move an inch and was completely aglow in the soft blue light. The saucer passed just to our east, and we all turned like automatons, watching it move away. Suddenly, there was a bright flash of light, and it was all over. The disc was totally and completely gone. It had not flown away at a high rate of speed. It had vanished. We all stood in a daze for a few moments, almost as if we had been taken over by some type of mystic force while these events had unfolded. Seeing the Bigfoot motionless within the tube of light was unbelievable, to say the least, and what the connection was between it and the craft is still unknown to all of us. We simply saw what we saw. To stand in the open country and watch this silent, massive glowing disc move across the landscape was intimidating. I mean, we all know jets, prop planes, ultralights, and rockets. But to behold something 400 feet in diameter, moving at a snail's pace and hovering motionless, while not so much as making a sound, was mind-blowing. It had to run on some sort of inexhaustible energy source. The lights were so bright and they never stopped pulsing and glowing. I mean, think about it. When we fly on a jetliner, there are the cabin lights, a few lights on the fuselage of the jet. This entire craft was a light. It contained numerous other tremendously powerful lights within it as well. The entire skin of this thing was moving, or at least that's the way it appeared to our eyes. It was like liquid contained within some type of casing, moving plasma, shifting and melting and swirling together. Thank you for listening.